innovation is not what drives change. Profit is really what drives change. So we need to think of ways to make different modes profitable rather than discussing the innovative nature of what possible change could look like. And he was really interested in holding faculty accountable and students holding faculty accountable more rather than students trying to hold the administration accountable. He was always talking about how the faculty were really in this in-between zone between the administration and the students, and that too often they had this self-understanding of themselves as positioned, directly with the students against the administration, when this is kind of a problematic placement of the faculty. So again, his idea was to pay teachers directly if the learning is worth it. And if the learning is not worth it, then they should not be paid. But cut out a lot of the administrative costs and the facilities costs, because these are not helping educate anybody. And another really important point that he mentioned with all seriousness, and this is what really struck me, was the seriousness with which he said this statement, was that stupidity is more serious than criminality. And this is a very serious statement, actually, because I think it really gets at the non-moralizing critique that Professor Kasdan was mentioning in some ways, too. That, the job is not to find the evildoers and to beat them over the head, but really just to think what we're missing in the big picture. What are we not connecting that needs to be connected before we can come up with a serious or discussion about what's happening? So anyway, more and more discussion occurred around kind of the critical filtering out of potentially destructive or critical minds within the university. And anyway, his whole point after this discussion was that disciplines are really not useful ways for organizing knowledge anymore. And to think more creatively, we should really abolish disciplines, or interdisciplinarity is the direction that we need to go in. Just a couple more things that, again, Professor Sanchez mentioned too, but capital likes identity politics, and this is something he emphasized throughout the course, was that identity politics is not in itself opposition to capital in any way. And more recently, I saw a New York Times article about something like this, how the idea of racial inclusiveness has made financial elites in this country ever more convinced of the meritocratic nature of the system. So it becomes much harder to undo the financial privileges when they're seen as the result of a meritocracy, which is boosted by, to some extent, identity politics. So it's really a difficult kind of issue to untangle, but he was really clear that capital likes identity politics. And then we got into kind of environmentalism and how the environmental movement itself has really been split between two visions of the environment and how justice needs to be enacted. One would be more of a social justice-oriented environmentalism focused on pollution in working-class neighborhoods and so on. The other is what he called the cult of wilderness, and he was very dismissive of this kind of environmentalism, but he really felt like there was such a disconnect between these two modes of environmentalism that this really gets at what the problem of the university itself is. It cannot even bridge these two modes of environmentalist thinking that essentially should be part of a kind of united front, or maybe not. I guess the class differences are really what pose a problem here. But anyway, he was very much interested in how to bridge this divide between different environmental groups and so on. The last thing I want to talk about is just non-growth. He was very much interested in non-growth and discussion, how we can adopt to a society of non-growth. And really, to get at this, it's not an abstract discussion so much as talking about modes of shopping and how people's shopping habits can really change the way we think about the economy and how growth is expected or not expected, and how sustainability can be a different kind of goal rather than growth. And whether a modern city can ever become self-sufficient, because if we're all in agreement that there's a sizable population that's going to live in the urban areas and that they cannot be self-sufficient, then we're at the beginning kind of accepting of the fact that this is not a sustainable situation. So how can the modern city ever become self-sufficient? Is such a thing possible? Anyway, what modes of production and consumption could go towards achieving that end? And one solution that he really brought up that was interesting to me is that he said, pension managers have great power. For example, the UC pension system has great amount of capital in it. And if a pension manager becomes much more politicized in the direction in which the pension funds are invested, then it can actually start to control corporations. So it's not that far off. It's not like a completely abstract, difficult concept. If people who actually manage these multi-billion-dollar pensions that we all contribute to, then we can maybe make somewhat of a difference. And at my school, actually, at NYU, we have a campaign to get TIAA-CREF, which manages our retirement funds, to divest from all companies that support Israel, for example. And now we've been attacked by a congressman who finds us to be, anti-whatever. But anyway. Anti-American. Exactly, anti-American. So ultimately, he wanted to know, or we were discussing in class, how can we measure well-being outside of consumption and outside of religiosity? Because these are kind of the two modes we're stuck in measuring well-being. And if we can talk about it in a way that either connects the two or gets us out of this kind of binary mode of always consumption as improving your situation, or against that image as the virtuous, religious, ascetic self as renouncing consumption. If we can get out of this kind of bind, we may be able to move ahead. But it may necessarily involve some kind of religious understanding or religious critique at the same time. So in any case, I think I'll just stop there. But that's pretty much what I just wanted to say. And I just learned a lot from Professor Miyoshi in a seminar. So that's really all I want to get across. Thank you.